Our speaker, thank you very much.
All right,
Brian King.
Yeah, I'm Brian King. I'm a business attorney. So I've been practicing for a little over 20 years now. And so I do contracts, company formations, and I advise business owners on how to protect their assets and grow their businesses. And so Krista had invited me to come speak to y'all about S elections and, in other words, subchapter S taxation. So my understanding is that Stephen came and spoke to y'all about S elections and such and different tax issues, and so, but y'all had some questions about S elections. So I was kind of give you kind of an overview and then open it up to questions at the end and everything. And so I understand, you know, many of y'all are taxed as LLCs, whether it's being single members or multi-members, and LLCs can be taxed as a subchapter S corporation without having to change your status with the state. You don't have to actually switch from an LLC to a corporation. You can just file, there's a tax form that we file, either the attorney or the accountant can file the tax form that would change your tax filing status. So, so why would someone want to be taxed as an S corporation? The only reason is to save on self-employment taxes, and it only applies in certain circumstances as to where you can take advantage of that savings. So the way that I like to explain it is to kind of just run a hypothetical. So let's say that you're a single member LLC, you have a net income after paying all expenses of $100,000. But let's say, you know, you manage your LLC day to day, and let's say a manager in your type industry, let's say that you're a reasonable salary for your position, if you had to hire someone to fill that position, might be $50,000. So what I do as an attorney is I draft the employment agreement setting your salary at that reasonable level. And the reason why I say, you know, it has to be reasonable is because the IRS, if they ever audit you, they're going to see if your salary is commensurate with what you would have to pay someone to come and fill that role. So the savings comes in where you file your income taxes and you report that you earned $100,000 in net income. But if you're taxed and you would pay, and let's say without the S election, you would pay income tax on the full $100,000, and you would pay self-employment tax income tax on that $100,000. The self-employment tax is 15.3% of your self-employed income. So now let's take, if you had filed the S election, being taxed as an S corporation, you would pay income tax on the full $100,000, but you would only pay self-employment tax on the $50,000, which is your salary. So your savings would be 15.3% times $50,000. All right. Now, the self-employment tax is 15.3% up to the wage base, which is about 124,000 or so, I believe it is. They adjust it 140,000. And then they adjust it kind of periodically, or usually annually, or maybe biannually. The IRS can reset that. But so 15.3% would be your tax up to $140,000, and then above that it's 2.9%. So so your savings by doing the S election, if let's say you made $200,000 instead of $100,000 net income, your savings on the above 140,000 is going to be 2.9%. All right. So, so as you can tell, the more money you make and the higher your reasonable salary would be, the less likely the S election might benefit you. So for attorneys, physicians, you know, other professionals, a lot of times the S election may not be the best choice just because we're only going to save 2.9% on the tax. And so another reason why someone might not want to do an S election is, let's say they want to maximize their retirement savings. So if you set up a IRA, a SEP IRA, a 401k with a profit sharing plan or you know, any of the other avenues that you can save for retirement, you're limited on what you can put into and save for retirement on those 401k profit sharing plans based on what your income is. So if you sort of artificially reduce your income to 50,000, you can't put as much away for retirement as if you had an income of a higher amount. Self-employment income is a higher amount. So if you know, in some of these, like with the profit sharing plans, you can put away a substantial amount for retirement, about $50,000 a year, if your income is high enough, you know, because it maxes out at around 50,000, and so if your income's high enough, you can put that much away every year. And so if you make a good bit, your reasonable salary would be high anyway, and then you may as well save as much as you can for retirement. And that's a good savings as well, because if you get a tax deferred growth on that money that you're putting away for retirement, but if you put it in a traditional IRA or a traditional you know, 401k plan. So if you take a deduction on your tax return, you know, this year, and let's say you're in the, I don't know, say, you know, between whatever tax bracket you're going to be in, maybe it's, you know, around 28 to 30 whatever percent savings, you're going to save that amount in tax this year, and then when you put the money in retirement, it grows over time, and later, like when you pull it out for retirement, you pay tax on it, but you deferred that tax for a substantial amount of time and let it grow in that tax deferred status. So another sort of caveats for elected entities is only certain, there's certain qualifications that you have to meet, which probably won't be a problem for most of y'all, but you have to have, you know, you can't have more than 100 owners. You have to have, it has to be a natural person or a qualified Subchapter S company that then it owns another company, you know, a Subchapter S company. So, so most of those probably won't apply to you because most of you are small businesses, so you would be able to file the S election and take advantage of that that status. And so I've helped a lot of clients where, you know, save on taxes where they've had, let's say they were, I don't know, let's say they were, just take an example of like a plumber or something, right? So plumbers can actually do pretty well. They, you know, you call a plumber nowadays and you get them to come to your house, I mean, you can pay a pretty good bit to get your, you know, plumbing fixed. So, but anyway, let's say their net income is 100 grand, but sometimes they get away with saying their salary, if they had to hire another person to go out and do plumbing, might be 30,000. So there's $70,000 times 15.3% that they can save. And so in those instances, it's usually pretty good to go ahead and file.
It also makes a lot of sense when you have employees, because then you have a portion of your profit is clearly derived not from your own.
That's right.
You know, work.
That's right.
Somebody else.
That's right. Yeah. So if the plumber has 5 employees, he can get his net income up pretty high usually, and then, but still his, you know, his income can be reported as pretty, or his salary can be reported as pretty low, because he's not actually going out and doing all of the plumbing. Sometimes where you have, let's say you had a multi-member LLC with 5 owners though, an S election may not make sense because by the time you add up all the salaries, you're equaling over, you know, 100,000 or so. So sometimes that doesn't make sense to do an S election in that multi-member context. So let's see. So that's kind of the main things there. Like I said, I mean, you know, so what I do for clients, you know, is usually go over that with the client, explain what we're doing, why we're doing it. I draft the employment agreement, setting their salary, and the reason we're doing that is because if they ever get audited, the IRS wants to see if there's a written employment agreement. I mean, in their audit checklist, that's one of the things that they want to see. And so, and then I file the escalation form with the IRS, or if they already have an accountant, or if I refer them to an accountant, the accountant could do that as well. So.
I have a question.
Okay.
Beyond S Corp, what are you doing for your business customers? What are you saying as business owners we need to have in place with a business attorney?
Right. So, I mean, I kind of like to say that, you know, any business needs a business attorney, and it's when a lot of times when the client comes to me, I look at their documents and see if their organizational documents are in good order. Most of the time they're not, because they either did it themselves, or they did it through legal Zoom, or they whatever, and or they, you know, it's just having your organizational documents in the right order and having the right ones is critical whenever if you're ever sued. The first thing they're going to do, the first documents they're going to request are your organizational documents. And if you're like, well, here's my articles, but I don't have anything else. All right, then they're going to say, okay, let me see your bank statements and stuff, and let's see if you're even operating as a separate entity, really. So just because you file and have an LLC doesn't protect you unless you operate it properly. So you can blow your protection if you are commingling assets, if you're, you know, don't operate the way that you're supposed to do, you know. So that's the first thing I do when I go with a new client. I look at their stuff, I draft documents, and we get it all in order. I also review their contracts. So there's a lot of times, in particular industries, there's particular sorts of contracts that they're using from day to day, and you know, if their contracts aren't drafted properly, they're exposing themselves to liability every time. And so I review the contracts, we go through them, make sure that they fit what they're actually doing, make sure that the agreement with either their client or with their vendors that they're using are what they think they are, or what they want them to be, and then include provisions in there to help them on collection if it's with clients. Let's say that they have customers that pay after the work is done. So a lot of times the clients will have collection issues. And so like I'll add attorney's fee provisions and jurisdiction provisions, where we're going to litigate, what we're going to, and that after my client wins, that he can collect attorney's fees and to pay the attorney to go after those fees, so it's not costing my clients a lot of money to go after the money for the work that they've done, So, and then I assist clients with trademark filings, and I file the trademarks, and so I advise them about what and why we're doing this, and whether they should or not, and whether their mark is acceptable or not, that sort of thing. And then I file those marks for them to protect them so that they can grow their business and expand, and not have to worry about someone infringing on their trademark and competing with them in an unfair fashion.
The other thing I would comment on is the first 2 commercial leases I signed, I didn't have an attorney.
Yeah.
And so I accepted a friggin' 10-year marriage without
Right.
any, so I get all my leases now go through my attorney. It's
Yeah.
a huge difference.
Yeah,
Whether it's your
yeah.
air conditioning unit or
That's right.
maintenance, your agent
Yeah.
agreement,
Yeah.
huge for me.
Yeah, that's right. I review commercial leases all the time, and I usually have a list of like 10 things or so that I'm changing in the lease, and and then negotiating back and forth with the landlord about this is acceptable, no, this is not, what we're going to do. And a lot of times, the business is brand new. They sign up for, as you say, a 10-year marriage with this landlord, and those commercial leases are usually, 20 pages or so of just stuff that the client's not familiar with, but I see all the time. And so I can review it in a relatively quick fashion, go through and change everything and that needs to be changed. And usually like for example, like things like options to renew, and you know, thinking about, okay, what happens if if my client is in business for a couple of years and then it doesn't work out and they have to close down, you know? What are the provisions in here that are gonna apply to
For
that?
assignability.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and being able to assign it to another, another tenant to, you know, come in and take the place of, my client, yes, we wanna have that in there, lots of other things, and, so, I also do business purchases and sales, so if a client comes to me and they wanting to sell their business or they're wanting to buy a business, I handle the negotiations and the transactional documents for those, from, you know, letter of intent stage to, you know, drafting the purchase agreement and setting up the tax allocations and all, and I usually work with the accountant in doing that, if it's an asset purchase. And then, and then the closing of the documents, you know, so the business closing. So, so I do that as well.
So I have a question. Is it important, like for my field, I'm a physical therapist, when I go see an attorney, do they need to have a background of like do they know about the profession and stuff? Because when I'm adding disclaimer paper and stuff like that, they need to understand whether that's, you know, it's correct or not paper. So is it important for an attorney to have that?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess that's part of since I've been practicing for so long, I've been exposed to lots of different businesses, so I already have a good understanding of most businesses and what they're doing. But it's good to explain to your attorney, you know, here's what I do from day to day, here's what I'm expecting. And so a lot of times what I'll do, like if it is like for example, I've had a few clients here recently with CBD stuff. And I'm not an expert on CBD. I don't do any kind of drugs or anything, and don't get into all that. But so I asked them a lot of questions, you know, about, you know, okay, tell me what it is they put in their food, and they, you know, and I just learned about, and that's one of the things I like about what I do is I get to learn about a lot of different areas of the law and a lot of different businesses, and so yeah, I mean, and a lot of times what I'll say to them is I say, well, is there a business that's similar to what you're doing? And then, oh yeah, well, I was looking at the website of whatever, and they do this, and this. And okay, well, what are some of the things that you're doing that they're not doing? Well, actually, I'm kind of copying what they're doing. I'm like, okay, well, do they provide terms and conditions on their website? You know, that it kind of explain, well, okay, well, let's start there, and then let's modify them and change them and add to, and I just start adding paragraphs, you know, to what they have and changing provisions and such. And that's a really good way to start with. So instead of reinventing the wheel, you've got something that already explains kind of certain
Areas.
yeah, so certain business areas and like you know, practices or trades, you know, of you know, that are different from business to business. And so yeah, I mean, it's definitely good. I mean, I try to get to know my clients and understand their businesses, and I've even gone and visited, like I've got a manufacturing client. I went over there and I just walked through their plant with them, and I was like, show me this, show me that, you know, and I was like, so that I could better understand what it is that they're doing, and when I draft the contracts, I can protect them better, so.
What about the new media world that is coming and then more is online?
Yeah.
How do you know, definitely we need to have disclaimers and everything online. Do you work on that portion as well?
Yeah. So, you know, social media and all has gotten so big that, like for example, like you know, like employee handbooks, you know, addressing social media policies in the handbooks, and I've had a lot of like you know, questions about defamation, you know, where an employee goes out and they start posting a bunch of stuff. My employer is this, that, and the other, and you know,
Please
and
would never do that.
yeah, and how we're going to address that employee, and you know, and getting the statements removed and all that, and you know, Google reviews, all that kind of stuff, you know, and so yeah, it's definitely a big area.
Yes.
So.
What advice would you give to a small business owner who is trying to contract with someone to build a website for them? the materials. They own the content, they own the images, and not the
Right.
web.
Right, that's gonna be set forth in the contract, and I reviewed a few of those actually and had to make that change in, you know, when I was representing my client who wanted to have a website done. Because sometimes you get these contracts and yeah, it says that they own everything, that, you know, whatever, and I'm like, no, we're not doing that, you know, so, I wouldn't use anyone that was gonna keep control of because what they try to do is get you locked into some subscription agreement where you're paying them every month. And then if you stop paying, they cut off your business essentially, because your business is online. So
I did not fall into that
we're
trap.
good.
But I know of people who have, and
Yeah.
they ended up having to basically rebuild,
Yeah.
pay someone to rebuild the website all over
Right,
again.
right. You wanna own your domain name, you know, before you even really get into an agreement with them. And then, you know, have an attorney review the agreement, because there may be other things in there too, that are worded in such a way that, like, there's certain, as y'all can understand, I mean, there's legal terms that mean something to me, but may not mean something to you. But when you go to court, the court's gonna look at it like I'm looking at it, and so we change and modify those things. So.
As a small business, we're looking to cover all of our bases, and it never occurred to us to talk to a business attorney. Would it be beneficial do you help small businesses, or do you focus more on the bigger?
I do both. I mean, I do from, you know, the smallest business, you know, one-man operation to bigger businesses. So yeah, I mean, with 50, hundreds of employees, you know, I mean, so it's, yeah, I mean, you know, the bigger companies they have an attorney on staff, like they have a general counsel that's there all the time, and I've worked as general counsel before in businesses, but mostly what I do now is I serve as sort of an outside general counsel, sort of like smaller business can't afford to have an attorney on staff, so you know, you just pay me for, you know, certain things as you need them. And you know, my best clients, I guess, as far as like, you know, the most successful ones and all that are ones that, you know, I was able to organize their documents and their company from the very beginning, draft good contracts for them from the very beginning, and advise them going forward. You know, they call me, you know, once a month or once every 6 months or whatever as they need it before they start signing contracts. I don't know how many times I've gotten calls from people. It's like, hey, I signed this contract and now review it and tell me what it means. Like, yeah, I can tell you what it means, but we can't change it now. It's already been signed, you know, and so I can tell you the 50 things we should have, you know, addressed before, but so yeah, so sometimes we do that, and then they wind up, you know, when they go to renew their contract, I can then make some adjustments and improve their situation. But it's just always better to call and find out, you know, and run something by your attorney versus making a mistake that's gonna cost you a lot more. I mean, you know, it's just, you know, I understand, you know, the perception is, you know, attorneys make, you know, a bunch of money because they charge a lot per hour and all this kind of stuff, but it's like so I told you about my best clients, the ones that do well. The ones I make the most money off of are the ones that don't call me before, they call me after. Because when they're in a lawsuit or they're being sued and we have to litigate it, it costs a lot more to, you know, something that could have been handled in, you know, half an hour or so, and just fixing stuff on the front end. So, you know, that saying about you know, penny wise, pound foolish kind of thing, you know, it's definitely true. That's right. That's right.
Do you meet people before you, like, you know, have an interview process or both?
Yeah, so I can do it either way. Like I either meet with them in person and we go over things, or I talk with them on the telephone. Like I've got clients all over the state of Georgia and South Carolina. So sometimes we just meet by phone, or we do a Zoom call, or you know, that sort of thing. So either way, but I learn about their business, what they're trying to do, decide what entity is going to be best and what tax structure is going to be best and that sort of thing. A lot of times, if they have an accountant, like I may ask them if I can speak with their accountant for a few minutes, because sometimes the accountant has a better, if they've been in business for a while, the accountant has a better idea of what their real net income is and whether, and so we can kind of have that discussion. Right.
David.
Right.
Yeah, how important is it to protect your company name for small business? For instance, like Google, my company, there's other ones similar in other parts of the country,
Yeah.
not in this area.
Yeah. So for a small business in say, Aiken, if there's another company even if it's in California and it's a similar name, maybe confusingly similar, you should pick a different name, just because if that company, one, they might have a federal trademark which protects them across the whole country, and if they do, they could stop you from using your name, and so you don't want to invest years of business into that name, and then all of a sudden you've got to stop and you've got to change your name, and that company could come to this area and use that name and stop you from using it, as long as they were using it first, right? So I do recommend a Google search at the very minimum to do that. When I talk with a client about trademarking a name, I do run a trademark search on the USPTO's website. I run a quick Google search, but I also ask the client, hey, you run some Google searches, you spend an hour or two, whatever you need to do to make sure no one else is using this. And then there's certain criteria for whether something is actually trademarkable. Okay, like some words just aren't going to be, and some are. So, but go through that and then file it. And then there's usually I get correspondence from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office where they may have questions about the mark and about the use of it and about the specimen that we have to send in, about how it was used, and then there may be other marks that are, if they are similar, how can we distinguish it, that sort of thing. So anyway, certain disclaimers that you have to put in there sometimes. But I would say that if you are planning on expanding your business outside of a market, let's say that there was no other marks being used that you could find, and you choose your name and you start operating. If you plan on going to, like, let's say you're in Aiken and then you want to go to Augusta, or you want to go to Atlanta, or you want to go to Columbia, or whatever, if you plan on expanding like that, I would recommend getting a federal trademark filing, because not only are you planning to expand, but let's say you were going to retire and you want to sell your business and someone else wants to take it and go nationwide, they've already got a protected trademark, so that's adding value to your business, and that you can get more for your business when you sell it.
Okay, I'm gonna just interrupt the flow for 1 second because we have someone leaving early and I wanna take a group picture before he leaves. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We always do a picture. So if everyone can look to Diane so we get all the faces in the picture and it'll be quick. Can you see them?
Yeah, I think I can see everybody. But I gotta take at least 2 or 3. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
I have a question to ping
Okay.
on that. Is that
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
So it's a 2-part question. I'm starting a second business and I'm in the process of searching names right now. And I found that someone else uses the name for this business. It is not trademarked though. We're in not the same state, completely different businesses. So if I get it trademarked, even though they used it first, is that?
If it's in a completely different field, so
It is.
let's say they're doing plumbing and you're doing, I don't know, whatever, something completely different, right?
Yeah.
Then yes, the trademarks are filed in particular classes.
Right.
And those classes identify with certain categories
Yeah.
of business. And so if you're in a completely different class,
Yeah.
then you can either get a trademark for under that class, even if they did have a federal trademark
In
for
a
a different
different
class,
I
right?
have a couple
Yeah.
trademarks, but so I'm starting this second business, and so that's good to know. And my second question is, I've seen people that do DBAs under their other LLCs, so I don't know really what the best advantage is, if I should do like Roots and Leaves, doing business as the Crunchy Club, because that's gonna be my second business, it's gonna be like digital courses and stuff. Or should I do two separate LLCs? Like, what's the benefits?
I would do two separate LLCs in that
Okay.
instance, because it's two different kinds of liability
Yeah,
that you can separate out.
true.
And so if one business it incurs certain liability and you're protected from that, but also your other business is protected from it. You know, because if, let's say, I don't know, let's say this business is worth 200,000 and this business is worth 200,000, you know, you aren't putting this business at risk.
Yeah, I gotcha. Makes sense. Thank you.
And even if the name, let's say I have a name and then the name has been used but we are also working online now. So if that name is used somewhere not in the US, somewhere outside of the US, then, because in Google or Instagram or all those, you can see the names that are even used like in Australia or somewhere else. Does
Yeah.
that affect?
So you can, so the federal trademark is gonna apply to US marks, right, only, right? So even if there's someone using a name in Australia, you can get a federal trademark for the US. So it's location specific.
You said you help businesses acquire other businesses. We're looking to expand in a year or two. Do you assist in assisting or acquiring a brick and mortar?
Yeah, for example, the commercial lease. So if you're gonna be getting a location to do your business in, yeah, I mean, that's usually the first step. And then also if you're in South Carolina and you're wanting to expand into Georgia, do a certificate of authority for Georgia, so.
So I know there's no other network marketers here, but what is different about, because I actually am a network market for a company, but it's my own business. I'm way behind.
So what do you mean?
So I'm building a team, my business is building a team, of consumers, and they build the team. It's a team building effort. That's how you get your business done. But we actually do that for a specific company. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I mean, I
I
think
don't
that.
know, I don't even know tax-wise really, because
Yeah.
that's really stuff.
You mean like what's different about your business versus some of the other businesses, you mean?
Yeah, as far as.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Do I need
you're providing a service, right? So,
Yes.
and, you know, do you have a physical location or do you
No,
just,
I don't.
yeah, so, you're gonna be, you know, you can have contracts for your services that you're gonna provide, you know, whether, I don't know if you get paid hourly or if you get paid by,
It's paid by consumption. If somebody buys
Yeah.
products, I get a commission for it.
okay,
That's it.
okay, I see. So, yeah, I mean, so you do it online?
Online, in
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, so, like, the things we talked about the terms and conditions on the website and that kind of thing is gonna apply to you, in your online business, and then, in person, I mean, I don't know if you have them sign a contract with you or not, but, yeah, or any kind of sales order or anything, so, but yeah, I mean, there's gotta be some sort of agreement or understanding that they have with you, and I mean, it could be that if the sales are online, that
They actually have their
That it
own
goes-
website that they order off.
yeah, so those terms and conditions and all are gonna control a lot of that.
Probably
Yeah.
through Isagenex.
It's all covered.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because they actually provide
It's
us
there.
with the website too.
yeah, yeah.
Like a blanket
Right.
thing, basically.
It's so different than what everybody else
Yeah,
is doing.
right.
Has anybody had any unusual legal experiences that they wanted to share with the group?
Not yet, not on
I want to ask a question. For someone who's looking to start publishing ebooks or physical hard copy books, what advice would you give?
copyright protection. So, whenever you write a book, you can file with the Copyright Office to get it registered with the Copyright Office to have that copyright protection. See, like most things that are written down already have what they call a common law copyright protection. But when you're talking books and selling publications, I would go ahead and file it with the Copyright Office.
What's the difference between a copyright and a trademark?
Totally different things. I mean, a copyright is like, say, an expression of an idea that's written out that you're going to have protection for. But a trademark is a brand, like it's a company name or a brand name association with goods or services that you're protecting.
Could you explain the difference between a service mark and a trademark?
So, a trademark, like a federal trademark, covers service marks and other marks. I mean, so the trademark is sort of a general term, and more specific would be like service mark, or So, but it's all trademark, and we would file that trademark application, just whether it's service or otherwise. It's going to be the same kind of filing.
So you can have a service mark, say for instance in North Carolina, that may not extend beyond the state. You would need to do that more on a national basis.
Right. I would recommend, like, you can get state protection for a trademark, but I would just go ahead and do the federal and not even worry about the state. I mean, because the federal is going to be broader.
Okay.
And there's statutes that come into play, the federal statutes that give you statutory damages, all these other things that come into play, and all the court cases and stuff. There's a whole body of law regarding it. Now in South Carolina, it's going to be this compared to this, right? Because South Carolina is a very small state. It's not very populated. There's not as much case law in South Carolina. There's a lot more in Georgia than South Carolina.
Sure. Second question, our organization is volunteer-based. So when we go out and do a roadside cleanup, which we insist that everyone sign a waiver.
I would too, yeah.
Should you review a waiver, or do you think if we've
one,
used other people's waivers, would
I just
be
reviewed
adequate?
one for a client this week.
Did you?
Yeah, and I added a bunch of things to it that they need to have in it. So
we should talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually have a similar question like that. So you said, getting started with a lawyer pretty much right off the bat. So whenever I go to a different client, I'm having intake forms and things like that. So if I were to say go to you, for example, do I need to go ahead and update with existing clients about, whatever paperwork might be updated?
Yeah, so depends, right? But if let's say it's a contract, I'm trying to think, so your business, you're doing the massage therapy, right? So I'm trying to think of your particular contract. So you're probably, what are you having them sign when they come to you?
Basically, kind of taking off any liability to me, like say if they, if they have pain, they can't go and say I caused them that pain.
Great example. So if you have them sign a waiver, then if we made changes to the waiver, then the next time they come in, you have them sign a new one.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, obviously, like with other, like more generally contracts, if the contract has a term of 2 years and you're only a year into it, you can't, unless they could decide that they want to sign another one. If you can always present it to them and say, hey, would you sign this? But they've already got a year left on their other contract, so they don't have to sign another one. But then when they go to renew, you can have them sign a new one.
So you practice in both states?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Do you get involved in other states too?
So as a general matter with attorneys, we can only practice in the states that we're admitted in, but there are some transactional matters that we can do without violating.
Secretary of State filings and things like that?
So yes, I form companies in other states, and I can do certificates of authority in other states, that sort of thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Where's your office located here in Aiken?
No, it's in Augusta, so it's at the intersection of Pleasant Home Road and Davis Road. It's close to the Bobby Jones Spaghetti Junction thing there, yeah.
Would there ever be a time when there would be value, and is it allowed, if you have what, your solo, one person LLC, could that LLC be put under a revocable trust that exists? And would you ever want to do that?
Well, the answer is yes, you could do that, but whether you need to is gonna, usually not. You usually don't need to do that. I know there's a lot of people who are running around like all over, they're trying to sell these family estate plans and stuff like that, where they try to make it seem real complicated, and they say, oh, well, you need to put your house in this trust, and you need to do this and that and the other. And really, it doesn't have to be that complicated. And frankly, unless you're like, say, Bill Gates, or have millions and millions of dollars, we don't really need to get into a real complicated estate planning. But you should have a will, which I don't do these things, but you should have a will and a living trust and a healthcare directive. So those basic things that you do need to have,
one of the reasons I was asking and thinking about it is, upon my demise, if I still have this LLC functioning,
yeah.
Would it be easier for our executors to dissolve the LLC?
So what would happen is, in your will, you are going to leave to whomever you wish your business. They would then get, so if your son or daughter or whatever, you can say they're gonna get this business, and they can either continue to run it, or they can sell it, or they can liquidate it. So that's where you're going to designate that.
The ultimate exit plan.
Yeah. Now, I can tell you from experience too, when someone dies and you're going sort of a fire sale, everybody knows that you're dead, or that you're not continuing the business and you're trying to sell it. You're probably not going to get as much for it as if you were trying to sell it ahead of time, before your death. But there are some tax advantages sometimes, if you're an asset-heavy business where the business maybe the assets were not as valuable when you first started the business, but over time you've collected a lot of assets and it's worth a lot, and you pass it down to the business, down to your son. There should be a step up in basis, so they could sell it and not have a lot of tax. So it just depends.
And that's got me thinking now. I've talked to Stephen about this before too, but as I look down the road with my business and wanting to sell it, I think I know who's going to buy it, unless Jerry comes up with a higher price.
I'll be in your will, though.
I'll be in the will.
It's gonna wait.
I'm a backup plan. But anyway, yeah, I'm looking probably 6 years down the road to do this. And the best way to get ready for that would that be with like a lawyer and an accountant?
Yeah, sure.
Team kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I mean, for evaluating, what the value is, the price, and then of course, the whole process of it.
Right, yeah, and you could even hire an accountant, certain accountants do this, where they do business valuations, they usually charge somewhere between $5,000 and 10 grand to do that. Now, you don't, yeah, and so, so you can do that and have a very, something objective for them to look at. If you're talking to your potential purchaser, and you can share that valuation with them and say, look, you can do, and you're welcome to go do your own valuation or hire your own business valuation expert, but this is what we have, and this is what we're basing our sales price on. And a lot of times, so if, I don't do business valuations. A lot of times I can get a rough idea if I'm looking at the past 3 years' tax returns of what the business is roughly worth, but I don't provide a set valuation. And then talking to the client about what it may be worth, what their goals are, their timing, and what they're trying to do, whether they're trying to offload it like to, say, an employee over a period of years because that employee's gonna kind of take over, or whether it's just gonna be, okay, at a certain point, I'm just gonna sell it all and be done with it because I don't wanna be a part of it if I'm not getting control, you know? And I would recommend that in general, even if you're selling off piecemeal, over time, once that, you know, once you get to that, lack of control, you don't wanna be
Be
part
gone,
of it.
yeah.
Did you have a question?
I have a quick question. So my niche is like Hispanic market in the area, and I see a lot in the construction business where, I don't know if it's because they don't have papers, so I don't know if that's something that you would draft up, some type of contract with them, with a contractor, because they would just like leave them unpaid. So like whenever they take the job with the contractor, should they have a contract?
Now, do you mean like illegal aliens or?
Right. Yeah, right, in that term.
Yeah.
So they don't have a social security number. They do have like an LLC, they have workers' comp, you know, an EIN.
So the construction company, should it have papers for the people it's hiring? Is that what you're asking?
Whenever they take a job from a contracting business,
Yeah.
a lot of times contractor just doesn't pay the small.
The subs.
They just don't. No, they don't pay them. They'll finish the job and then they don't pay them. So I mean, sometimes they end up owing them 10 grand. Sometimes it's 20. Sometimes it's 50.
Sure.
Yeah.
But the fact that they just look at them like, well, you're illegal. You're not gonna take me to court. You know, they do it, and I see it all the time. So my question is, should they have a contract when they
Yeah,
start
I
that
mean,
business?
if you're gonna do work for somebody, you should have a contract that's for what you're gonna be doing and for how much and when it's gonna be paid. You know, I guess that with illegals, that they may not want to even have a contract, but, you know,
Right, but yeah,
they're
that was my
scared of,
question.
they're scared of being.
Right.
Plus they're holding them to court anyways.
Yeah, so it's, you know, the company should be hiring people who are authorized to work in the United States, period. They shouldn't be hiring illegals. So that's,
Because they're violating the law.
yeah.
Their intent probably isn't to pay.
So would you be able to draft a contract for someone that it's not legal, but they do have a legal entity?
Like to do that?
Well,
Yeah, it doesn't sound too great. So I can draft a legal contract between a business and another business,
Right.
yes.
Correct,
Right.
okay.
How do we get an LLC without it?
Yeah.
You don't need to be legal to get an LLC.
Really?
I don't have the tax side, you gotta have the social security number.
You don't need a social.
That is interesting.
That's why, it gets tricky because you can do so many things, but
Right.
then
But-
you can't.
Right, but then they're gonna have to sue to enforce that contract if they don't pay. And then the question is, do they want to be in court, you know, where the guy says they're illegal, that's the first thing he's probably gonna say. And then whether,
And right
he
before
may call
elections.
immigration and have them come to court and get them or whatever. Now, it's up to the immigration authorities whether they're gonna do that, but
Yeah, I just wonder if they have a contract to begin with.
it'd be better to have
Would
a
it?
contract,
Right.
because at least there's it's easier to sue and win if you have the contract.
Wouldn't it make sense if you had a subcontractor group of workers that were potentially not legal, but one of them were, they could strike a contract with the one that was, he would then have his group of people below him. In other words, they'd be paying the one fella for the work of that plumber,
Yeah.
for the work, and then he could disperse the cash. If there was a dispute, you have a legal contract between two.
Instead of putting it on.
Yeah,
Legal
yeah,
entity.
right. I mean, that's kind of what I was, the LLC would be a legal entity,
Right.
in a contract with the general contractor. And then that LLC, being a legal entity, you know, then the issue would be, you know, are the people the LLC is hiring legal? But the contract, yes, it's enforceable, so.
Nice questions, great questions.
Anything else? We're almost close to the end of our time with Brian. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to ask him? I certainly hope that you have some business cards on you.
Actually, I didn't bring them in.
We're gonna sue you.
I'll give you a number.
But how about
Better
this? I
put your
can
number.
send my information to Krista and she can
Yes.
email it out to you. That'd be
Just
great.
give us your cell phone number, or your phone
Yeah,
number.
yeah,
not
for
number,
your personal.
like phone number, business phone number.
Yeah, my phone number is 706, I'll just give you my cell, 799-8117.
We just got an attorney's cell phone number. That's pretty good.
Can you repeat
Are
that,
you a sole
please?
practitioner, or do you have others in your office?
It's just me and my office staff.
Okay.
Could you repeat the last four?
706-799-8117.
Got that, Krista?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
good.
Yeah, appreciate your time.
Really good.
Thanks for having me.
Now,
You're
you-
welcome to join us anytime. But I
Now,
know
you're
that
licensed in Georgia, right? Because you're a
Yes.
business,
Yeah,
but you can
yeah.
practice, do.
Both states, yeah.
Okay, both states.